Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I'm wearing too many fucking sweaters.
You are. What is going on there? Is that your whole wardrobe?
It's all of it. It's everything that I own.
This is Comic Talk Talks Comics. This week we're going to talk about collecting and variant covers, and just all aspects of collecting comics. So, what do we mean by collecting? When I say collecting, what do you think?
I think of people buying comics not based off the stories inside whatsoever.
Right. Baseball cards.
Yeah. Monetary value.
Right. Or just, not even just monetary value for me. I think that's a big part of it. But I also think of like action figures.
Yeah.
Right? People that go out and they buy, the Superman toy. They might also go to the comic shop and while they're buying a toy, buy, oh, look, Superman is fighting Doomsday.
Yeah.
I'll buy that. And then maybe read it and maybe not.
There's also like first appearance of Wolverine or whatever. And, yeah.
Right, like old school stuff, like buying like on eBay.
Yeah.
Like, I really love Deadpool. I've never read Deadpool, but he's so funny in those memes, right? What was his first appearance? Oh, it's only $742. I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess that is also probably what we're talking about here, but...
CGC graded whatever.
Right. Yeah. So comics as not an artistic medium as much as a speculator market and
taking literature and sealing it in lucite.
Right. Exactly. Bounding up your Moby Dick copy and putting it on the shelf without ever reading Moby Dick and pointing to it and go, look, Moby Dick. Right. Yeah. Kind of the same thing.
The first variant cover, interesting, was on The Man of Steel in 1986. It had two different covers.
86?
86. X-Men number 1, 1991, was the best-selling comic of all time so far, largely due to its variant covers. And it sold 8.1 million copies. And that was really in the beginning. And
8.1 million copies?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
A good comic these days sells maybe 100,000 copies,
Yeah. If you get to like 500,000, that's like a big fucking
That's
deal.
a huge comic. Yeah.
Secret Wars number 1 was like 500,000, and Marvel was like beside themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. 8.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how many people bought multiple copies of that?
That has to be like what it all came from. I think there was like 4 or 5 different variant covers that came, and people just went out and tried to get them all.
Yeah. I can't imagine 8.1 million people reading an X-Men comic. Maybe 1 million people buying 8 each, or 50,000 people that went out and bought 30 of each. It has to be. So, I mean, first of all, there's a reason when we're talking about variants. Let's start there.
Sure.
There's a reason they do these.
Money.
Yeah. Right. So some of these publishers, Marvel specifically, they have these schemes. Do you know how these work?
Yeah, it's like if you order 50 of them, then you get one of these. And if
right.
you order, 100 of them, you get one of these.
Yeah, this is a 100-to-1 variant, a 250-to-1 variant. You have to buy this many. But they do even crazier stuff than that, actually. They also have like their hip-hop variants that are actually pretty cool. They're like old hip-hop cover. They're like the covers of old hip-hop albums redone in the style of done in the style of those, but for whatever the character is. So
and DC did that with like movie posters and stuff. Like there's the Matrix Batman and
and Marvel also has like cosplay covers. Have you seen the cosplay covers where it's like actual cosplayers on the cover pretending to be that character? But what they've been doing is they have this 1.5 thing. 1.5X is what they call it, and you have to order 1.5 times the number of a certain set of different issues that you would normally order for the shop. So if the shop normally ordered 20 issues of Vision and 10 issues of X-Men, to get the Vision hip-hop cover, they'd have to order 30 Vision and 15 X-Men, right? And then they'd get the hip-hop cover of Vision. Or it could be, some of them are even crazier. I think the Vision one, you have to order like double the Thor or something. Like it's not even Vision. It's like other books that you have to order extra of. And it's like this crazy convoluted scheme to try to up, they need to sell more Thor and they know people want the Vision variants. So you have to buy more Thor to get the Vision variants. which the shop can then take the Vision variants and sell them for $20 a pop.
Yeah, to recoup all
To
the Thor that they're not going to sell.
The Thor that's just going to go in the trash. But it pumps up the Thor sales numbers to make Thor look better, and then Vision looks the same. Like, so it's, you know, it's totally, they're just manipulating the market. And a lot of people, like the main complaint I've seen is the market manipulation. It's bad for the books because it keeps shitty books in circulation.
Dude, okay, Harley Quinn has to have like more variant covers than any other DC book I've ever seen.
Right.
It's not a good book.
Right.
It's never been a good book. You know, this whole thing with Harley, like I really don't get it. You know, but if there wasn't a collector's market, I don't think the Harley Quinn comic would exist. At least not in the same form that it does. Because it doesn't, I mean, if you read it, it doesn't even seem like they're trying to tell a good story or even like a coherent story. You know, they're just throwing some cutesy shit together and you get to see the top of her tits in a couple panels and, you know, that's all it takes.
Right. And it's strange. Harley Quinn's an interesting example because, well, first of all, I've recently seen her start to be described as the Deadpool of the DC comic universe.
I can see that.
I think it's completely reasonable. It's a character that most of the people who say they like the character have never read the comics at all.
Right.
Most of the people that have Deadpool t-shirts don't read Deadpool. Most people that have Harley Quinn, you know, on their shit, they have their Harley Quinn backpack or whatever. They don't even know anything about Harley Quinn other than it's on their backpack, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Who t-shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's, God, you go to like a con or something, even like the small Comic Con that we had here, it's like if I had taken a shot for every fucking Harley Quinn cosplay I saw, I would have been like wasted within 15 minutes.
Right.
You know, with a crowd of like 200 people.
Right.
You know, it's absurd.
Yeah, and it's bizarre. Like, Harley Quinn is really bizarre. She could go to the mall and pick out any 10 random females, 35 and under, and you'll get one, at least, that has Harley Quinn as the wallpaper on their phone. And you'll get zero who've ever read a Harley Quinn comic book. You know? So sometimes you have these characters, and I am getting somewhere with this variant thing. So sometimes you have these characters that have like a zeitgeist to them that people have kind of put their own thing onto. They've projected their own values onto the character, and they don't want somebody else's values for that character. They want that character to be like an empty vessel to carry their own feelings around with. You know, so Harley Quinn's a good example of this, where I think a lot of people then go in and buy the variants, the one that looks the way they want Harley to be. They buy the variant and they have the cover and they're good. Like, that cover looks like the Harley Quinn that's in my head. I'm happy with it. Here's my $8.
Yeah.
Now I can feel like I am a part of Harley Quinn because I have the comic that looks the way I think of Harley Quinn. You know?
Sure.
And we see that a lot with Marvel too, where there's these different covers that have nothing to do with the story. All the Scotty Young variants, that's an interesting thing. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Like, they never look like the comic, obviously. Scotty Young has his own thing. And I think he has his own cadre of Scotty Young variant purchasers, right? Who
just like Scotty Young. So
they just want all the covers he's done. I've seen these people. Like, they're like, ooh, Scotty Young cover, I'm buying it. I don't read this book, but it's got the cute little chibi version of Iron Man on it.
Yeah.
So I'm buying it, right? So where do you stand on all this? Do you think this is bad?
Well, first, I think it's important to realize that the collector bubble in the 90s burst eventually.
Brutally.
Yeah,
I mean, these companies almost went under. The reason, if you don't know this, if you're watching this, the reason Spider-Man and X-Men, Fantastic Four, these movie franchises, the reason they're not with Marvel now, and they're with Sony, and they get all these kind of half-assed shitty movies or sometimes okay ones, is because Marvel went bankrupt from all this. They did so many variants. They're pumping out so many more issues than they were actually selling with all these schemes where you have to buy more and then they'd get returned, and like it was a disaster. In the foil covers, did you ever see foil covers and
3D ones, lenticular shit.
Yeah, it ended up being a lot like the Atari crash in the 80s, where there was just so much garbage. So Marvel went bankrupt and had to sell off their movie rights to these companies for pennies on the dollar, and that's why Sony still has them, and why we still get these halfway garbage movies for a lot of those. So, and it was because of variants and such, like, or at least a big part of it. I would argue that it was more just because the comics sucked, but a lot of people blame it on variants because there was tons of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you can kind of tell that their main focus at that time was just like making money and stuff like that. They put way more effort into putting out variant covers and shit than they did to actually putting out good stories.
Right.
And eventually, I guess those collectors finally opened the comics and realized that they weren't that great, and they all of a sudden their limited edition variant, was fucking all over the place, absolutely flooding the market.
Right. Everybody wanted to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so everybody stopped buying. But I think it can be short-sighted, though, just to immediately compare to the 90s. Because I think this stuff does have a place, and it works well. It works out great for people like us that aren't collectors and aren't interested in that for the most part. Mm-hmm. I will say I am occasionally interested in a variant. If it's like a comic I love, and the variant's really cool looking, and it's maybe by an artist that I really like.
Yeah.
I'll spend the $10 and buy that variant cover if I really like it and think it's really cool. But
that's really all the thought I put into it, though, is like you go and it's like, okay, here's the A cover and there's the B cover. Well, I like the B one this month, so there we go.
I'll grab the B. And even and even when they're more expensive, if the B is $10 and the regular's $4, I just do, this quick math in my head. Do I like this one $6 more than I like that one? And usually, almost every time, the answer is no, like 99 out of 100. But every once in a while, it's yes. Like, I really think that's awesome. I'm going to buy it because I want it in my collection. But I'm also not really a collector. I've given away 5 to 10 times more comics than I own. Like, most of what I buy, I don't keep. I've given long boxes away. I've just said, here, you can just have it. Like, I already read it. Like, what?
Yeah.
Am I going to read it again? Like, no, I don't read things a second time. So,
where do you find, there has to be some aspect of collecting that you're into.
I don't think so.
Not at all?
I really don't think so. No. I'm kind of a minimalist. I like, I get more pleasure out of getting rid of things than acquiring them. Like, as I acquire things, I start to feel like overburdened. I'm like, oh, I got too many of this sort of thing sitting around. Like, and then like my happiness comes when I figure out a way to get rid of it. So
I think for me, and this is a very modern thing, but like just collecting certain writers. Like, I would love to have everything that like Brubaker has ever written, or everything that O'Neill has ever written. And like a whole series, I think, is really cool. Like, I'm really into the O'Neill question again. So, when I went and bought the O'Neill question, it's like, no, I know I'm gonna like this. I'm just gonna get fucking issue 1 through 40, and then that'll be great. And that really comes from, I guess, not only wanting to support those certain writers, and I have this thing about like bookshelves reflecting the people that own them. And it's the same sort of thing. Like, if you walk up and you see a bookshelf that's full of like Hemingway or something like that, it's having a whole bookshelf full of like Grant Morrison is like my version of that, and I think it's cool. And if you want to share them with people, coming from our perspective of being like more writer centric, you'd be like, okay, well, you need to check out this writer so you can have this series or this series or this series, and they're all going to be great. Right.
That's true. And I can't say that I don't collect anything or any comics, because I do. Like, I intend to eventually have the ultimate collection of Invincible, for example. I have
that Suicide Squad where they killed Grant Morrison.
Exactly. I have some single issues. I have that one that you actually gifted to me that I think is awesome and will eventually be like displayed somewhere. I have a Uncanny X-Men annual that was written by Joss Whedon that I think is awesome. Like, so there are a few things that I keep, but for me, you know, like one shelf is a lot of comics to keep. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's a huge collection, whereas a lot of people would look at that and say, like,
I got 17 long boxes in my garage just full of Spider-Man. You know?
right, right. A lot of people would come in and see my collection and just assume that I must be like a new reader because I have so little. But I'm very
You're a casual reader, whatever that means.
right.
But it's a strenuous comic reader.
yeah. But yeah, I'm just very, very selective of what I actually want to keep because I'm not going to read it again. I know I'm not going to read it again. So I'd rather most of the time give things to somebody else and let them read it and not be worried about getting it back. Like the big problem, I hate giving somebody something and then like thinking that you're going to get it back because we all know that like that's a 50-50 proposition with almost everyone alive. It's just the way the world works, you know. So for me, I give things to people and say give it back to me, but if they don't, like, cool, I don't care. I didn't expect it back anyway. Don't use that against me. But
I still have your Alan Moore Swamp Thing, by the way, and you can get that back to you.
Yeah, okay.
I let somebody borrow it, and then I let somebody else borrow it.
Yeah, cool. No, I mean, you know, people are reading it, so
Yeah, exactly.
cool. But so trying to get back on topic here, I think overall, like, these schemes and stuff, although they're a little bit, I don't know, skeezy, you know, they're kind of a market manipulation, but if that means that like people are coming in and buying comics, even if they don't give a fuck about comics, if they're spending the money to the companies that are making things that I like, then good. Like, take advantage of those people as much as possible. Like, you know, I have no problem with you know, a fool parting with his money for my own benefit. You know, so if DC can sell 14 different variants of Harley Quinn to people who will never read it, but that means that they have that much more money for their comics division to put out things like Prez and Omega Men and Grayson, then cool. Like, keep doing it. Like, fleece those people for as much money as possible, you know?
Yeah, not to mention, with collecting being the way that it is, you can get a lot of a really highly critically acclaimed series, and like if you just get the Spark Notes or something on the number one, you know, that's selling for like $300, and then every other issue is like $1.35.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Or just do what I do and just pirate the first issue.
Right.
You know, just it's used. Okay.
Yeah.
It's used. Like,
you wouldn't steal a used car, or would you?
Right. Like, you're not. If I was to buy a used, you know what? We'll make this a separate.
Okay.
That's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
We're going to have one of these for pirating comics. You cool?
We have to.
Yeah, we got to do that because I have really weird views about that. I think these people will like to hear it. Yeah, like one of the interesting things that comes from this is then the collectors are all over the garbage. Right? It's like
Hulk 181 is fucking awful. Like, who gives a shit if Wolverine's in it?
Right.
It's a terrible story.
Right. It's like there's a pile of trash over here that's all different pieces of trash. Right? Tons of different pieces of trash. And then over here are all the same diamonds. Right? And there's just people just like fighting over the trash because it's the only can of empty green beans in the world. There's no more green bean cans, right? And then over here is like a whole pile of diamonds. You can just like walk up and like put them in your pocket because nobody's fighting over it because there's too many of them, right?
Right.
That's the way I feel about comics a lot of times. Like most of the good shit is cheap. Like we do our bargain bin series.
We haven't had a bad series yet. Like,
It's
both
fucking
fantastic.
awesome stuff, and it's all like $1.35 an issue on average. You know, like under $2, and it's all really good. And then you look and you know, you go to like your comic shop and you'll see like X-Men 425 for $180. It's like I could buy like 17 amazing series.
Yeah.
For
the whole runs.
Yeah, like entire runs of awesome shit for like the price of that one shitty X-Men comic where Mystique first showed up, but it was written by, you know, Joe Blow douchebag who was writing a children's comic in the 70s. Like, who gives a fucking rat's ass, right?
The one thing that I think the collector's market does kind of do is when you start attaching that sort of monetary value to things, like they start to become a little bit more respectable, like in the mainstream. But I don't know that I necessarily care about that either. You know?
Right.
I mean, it's nice, but I would still read them regardless. Like, I don't care what, my dad thinks about comics or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, no, you're right, though. Like, that show Comic Book Man is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Like, people see that show, I feel, they see that show and they think that is comic books. Like, this whole collector's market of, look at this, I'm so excited because I've got Amazing Spider-Man #5, and, it's worth all this money. And, like, they associate, like, these garbage comics that are worth a lot of money to, like, how the worth of comics should be assigned, just because that's what's pushed in sort of popular market because of cost. Like, it's expensive, so it must be what comic people like, right?
Right.
People think that all the time, like, oh, what's the most expensive issue I'm sure you guys have all gotten this question. What's the most expensive issue you have?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, $3? Like,
Yeah.
how much is a comic? It's like $3. Like, what are you fucking talking about? I got a trade that was $14. That's kind of expensive. Right?
Right.
And then they're flabbergasted. They don't understand what you mean. Like, well, don't you have any cool issues? Well, yeah, they're all fucking cool.
Yeah, that's
like,
why I have them.
Yeah, they're good because I read them. Like, how much does it cost to buy Moby Dick? It's like, isn't it free? Like, can't you just download it for free now? Because it's like common, right? But even like great novels, you pay $8. Like, what's the best novel you have? Was it $70? Like, no, it's just a good novel. It was $7, just like the other ones, right?
Yeah, yeah. Even if you don't have like the first printing of, On the Road or whatever, like the
It's
fourth printing is gonna be the same fucking story,
it's the same
bro.
book. They probably also fixed like some syntax errors and shit,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
those missed periods, missed periods. It's not what I'm.
And a Kerouac book.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, probably. Can't think of any off the top of my head, but I bet it's in there. So yeah, you do have a point. Do you think that's bad for the industry? Like what collecting does to like the mainstream concept of comics?
It is kind of weird because we're not like fucking Civil War, we're like collectors, and it's almost placed in that same kind of thing. Like,
Right.
but comic book men is like the Pawn Stars of
Right.
like nerddom,
Right.
And beyond that, I don't give a shit about like the toys and the statues. It pisses me off, honestly, that they call those little toys statues.
Right.
It's absurd.
Well, they're statues because they're $147.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't move.
Yeah.
They're shittier, they're unarticulated, thus more expensive.
It's like the Squire Strat has 3 pickups and a wood body, and then the American Strat has like the Brazilian rosewood
Yeah.
hand rolled edges, with the Dunlop 6105 fret
Right.
wire.
Right. You just lost like every viewer we have, but yes,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
with
cool.
you. I'm
Yeah,
with you. I
yeah.
got you.
That's as far as it's gonna go. But yeah, it's just weird. I think it definitely doesn't do anything for the idea of artistic merit by any means. It's just kind of supply and demand at that point.
Right.
And that's really what I'm concerned with. Like I want to see more, say, high school English teachers teaching like graphic
Right.
novels and stuff. That's my dream of where comics should go. It's not
Right.
walking into an antique store and having a whole wall of variant covers.
Right.
Whatever. I don't give a
Exactly.
shit.
I think it is interesting that because of that market, comic books tends to have that negative persona to it. Can you think of any other medium that has that problem? Like, you don't say like, I really love music, and then people just assume that you mean, Katy Perry is like your favorite artist. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
oh, well, you must really like Justin Bieber then. But with comics, it still has that. Like, if you say you like comics, they assume that you love that aspect of it, like cheesy, comics for kids from the 70s is what people think of.
And also, I think it's bigger in like the older generation, but just the associations that people make. Like, if you mention a comic or something, some old middle-aged guy's like, oh, I got a whole chest full of baseball cards if you want to check those out.
Right.
It's like,
What the fuck does that
No?
have to do with anything?
yeah.
Yeah. Like, man, I really love novels. Oh, really? Well,
I got a Mad magazine.
I've got a ton of yarn. Like, what? Like, yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
I think we're straying again. Maybe we should also do one of these for perceptions of comics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is something to be said about collecting, giving it that negative persona that is good and bad. But ultimately, if you're not worried, I think so. What we're coming to is if you're not worried about how other people feel about what you're into, it's probably good for us, like overall, like these variants and the collecting market, just because it opens up, it puts more money into, circulation for the industry, and it makes the stuff we like cheaper, right?
Yeah, but again, that market manipulation is a big one.
That is the big red mark on it, isn't it? You see books like Harley Quinn just getting more and more money because of it, and also with the weird stuff Marvel does, where books that are doing poorly sell more so they can get cool stuff for the other books. Like, that's kind of bullshit. Like,
yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. If you have any ideas for some more of these talk comics that we could do, big, broad industry kind of conversations that you'd like us to hash out, let us know in the comments below. Down underneath me, where my balls would be, if you could see my whole body, in that general area, maybe my feet.
Sure.
I don't know. Has anybody got a tape measure? Also, what do you think of collecting? What do you think of variants? Do you buy them?
What do you think?
Are you into those?
You into that shit?
Do you like that? You dirty whore. Do you like it? Facebook, Twitter, those are below in the description. We'll be back on Wednesday to do our weekly pull list review. And we'll be back next Monday with more stuff like this.